Hello, welcome to my channel, another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and today I'm going to tell you the most saddest, or the 10. Hello, welcome to my channel, another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and today I'm going to tell you the 10 most satisfying books that I read in 2023. This is sort of a best of list, but I'm hesitant to make a list and call it the best books and list them in order and ranking them of this book is better than the next book. These are all books that I read and enjoyed very much in 2023. That's why I'm saying that is satisfying books. That feeling when you finish a book and you go, yeah, that was a good read. I really enjoyed that. So I'm just going to be calling them satisfying books. I'm not going to be giving them in any ranked order. I am dividing them up into categories of literary fiction, genre fiction, and nonfiction, just to separate them out a bit. Because honestly, you really can't judge a work of literary fiction against a work of genre fiction because the criteria of what makes them enjoyable are totally different. And that equally applies to nonfiction. You're looking for different things when you're reading nonfiction. But before I get to my 10 most satisfying books, I want to give some honorable mentions because really the books in the honorable mentions could have easily been on the top 10. It's just that I selected other books instead. And I'll be very quick about the honorable mentions. The Hour of the Star by Clarice Lispector, translated from the Portuguese. It was originally published in 1977, and my translation was 2011. It is the story of a poor woman in Brazil who has a really rough life. The next is The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead, originally published in 2019. It won the Pulitzer Prize. It is the story of a young African-American man who gets wrongly convicted of stealing a car and sent down to a prison camp for youthful offenders. Really good. Now for some genre fiction. Airport by Arthur Haley, originally published in 1968. This just proves that a thriller doesn't need Hollywood extravaganza storylines to be really great. Sister, Maiden, Monster by Lucy A. Snyder, published in 2023. This is an extreme horror book. It is the aftermath of a virus epidemic, or sorry, say pandemic. And the survivors, or some of the survivors, want to eat human brains afterwards. Spartacus by Howard Fast, originally published in 1951. It is a story of the slave revolt by Spartacus against the Roman Empire. Really enjoyable. It just shows that 1951, they were still writing great books. For nonfiction, we have Prequel, An American Fight Against Fascism by Rachel Maddow, published in 2023. I did not include this as the best because I think this book is going to have a short lifespan because it's talking about, even though it's talking about history and how America has flirted with fascism before. An Immense World, How Animal Senses Reveal the Hidden Realms Around Us by Ed Young, published in 2022. This was the winner of the Nonfiction BookTube Prize, and I liked it a lot. It's basically about how animals sense the world. And now on to the top 10. Literary fiction. The Recognitions by William Gaddis, published in 1955. This follows the story of the son of a Baptist minister, or I'm sorry, a Methodist minister named Wyatt Gowan. The father wants the son to be a minister too, but the son is much more interested in painting. He is very talented, but maybe not all that original. And he gets involved in forging artwork. And the idea of forging artwork is essentially you just make a copy of a famous piece of work to the point where only experts can tell the difference. And what I learned from this book is that that's perfectly legal. It's not forgery to copy a work of art until you sign the original artist's name to that piece of work. And at the beginning, Wyatt is quite willing to forge the pieces, or not forge, paint the paintings, but he's unwilling to sign the work and commit that final act of forgery until later in the book, when he does commit the final act of forgery. And after that, the author never mentions the name Wyatt again. He's just a nameless character. Totally fascinating. It is one of those maximalist postmodern novels that you're either going to really love or you're really going to hate. I really love this book. I think it's right up there with J.R. You will get some people who say the Recognitions is better than J.R. and some people saying J.R. is better than the Recognitions. I'm going to say J.R. is the better of the two books, but really, the Recognitions is a really fascinating book to read. Another literary work of fiction was The Maniac by Benjamin Labatut, published in 2023. Sometimes this novel reads a little bit like a work of nonfiction because the author puts so much research into this. It is the story of Jean von Neumann. He is a physicist, a mathematician, and sort of the father of modern computing. He had lots of ideas about modern computing and robots. He is most famously known for von Neumann machines, which were purely theoretical. And a von Neumann machine is a machine that can recreate itself and improve upon itself. Therefore, a life form unto itself. Now, this book is told in a series of voices. Each chapter is a different character narrating what they think about John von Neumann. So you get lots of opinions about this character, but you never actually get to see what it's like to be John von Neumann in the novel. You only see what other people think of him. This book is also broken up into 3 stories. The first one is from an Austrian physicist. I think he's from Austria. He was a physicist that was a teacher of John von Neumann. And this physicist killed himself after murdering his mentally disabled son. There is a third part of this novel about a Go championship. Now, Go is an Asian game played with black and white pieces, and it is a highly complex game. Back when I was in the 90s and I was into computer programming, it was my profession, I was reading articles about how a computer could never be taught to play the game of Go because it was just so intuitive and so complex that a computer couldn't do it. But the third part of this book is a retelling of a Go championship. The man who was the Go master playing against a computer and losing against the computer. Highly fascinating to a computer programmer like me. I'm not so sure it'd be all that interesting to other people, but maybe it would be. I still highly recommend this book. In genre fiction, I'm picking The Haar by David Sodergren, published in 2022. This is the story of an elderly woman off the coast of Scotland. She is living in a house that her husband built for her. Unfortunately, the town has been bought up by a very rich American man. And he's trying to build a golf course in this area. And she's the last holdout because she just doesn't want to sell her home. That's where she wants to die. Her husband has passed away, and she wants to die in the same home that her husband died in. The American businessman, who is not Donald Trump, has other ideas. But this woman encounters a sea monster. And this sea monster is friendly towards the old woman. Sea monster is not friendly to other people. Other genre fiction is The Fisherman by John Langan, published in 2016. This is the story of a man who lost his wife young. They were a young couple when she died. And to help heal his grief, he started up fishing. And fishing became his balm, his way of dealing with his grief and the world. Later, as he's a middle-aged man, probably 40s, maybe 50s, I can't quite remember. He is working at his place of business, and a younger colleague loses his wife and child to a tragic automobile accident. And he reaches out to this colleague and says, "Why don't you come fishing with me? It helps with the grief." And lo and behold, the colleague does get some relief from fishing until he reads about a very special fishing spot where you can catch things that most people wouldn't want to catch. And then there's a separate sub-story in this book about how this place came to be. It is really a fascinating cosmic horror story, but it also deals with how people deal with grief. And if you have these desires to undo that grief and bring back people that you have lost. The next are all nonfiction. A lot of these came from the BookTube Prize nonfiction categories because I was a judge in there. And I really liked a lot of these books, as you will soon see. The Secret History, The Secret City, The Hidden History of Gay Washington by James Kirchick, 2022. I had originally not selected this book when I was going to be a judge for the BookTube Prize. You're given a list of books to select that you think you'd like to read. And I did not select it because I thought this would be a history of gay culture in Washington, D.C., or gay people in Washington, D.C. But it's really about how gay people were affected by the political times and how they were discriminated against rather ruthlessly in the political system. And also how some political people were more open to them and let them work in the government, including some presidents. And I like this book much more than I thought I would. Paradise Falls, The True Story of Environmental Catastrophe by Keith O'Brien, 2022. This is the story of Love Canal near Niagara Falls. In the early parts of the century, the 20th century, this area was used as a toxic waste dump. Later, they decided to fill in the dump and build a school on top of the dump. Now, you would think that people would be smarter than that. But, the school board was convinced that there was absolutely no danger about this toxic waste built on a schoolyard, or any danger to the homes they were building near this toxic waste dump. How wrong they were. And this is the story of some women who, after losing some of their family members, decided they wanted to fight back. And get themselves out of this area. Now, the problem is this was not a wealthy area. These people could not afford to leave their homes because they had mortgages to pay. And the mortgage company says, you still have to pay for this home, even if it's lethal to you. So this is a story of their fight to get that changed and how it helped Nixon create the EPA. A really fascinating book. The Escape Artist, The Man Who Broke Out of Auschwitz to Warn the World by Jonathan Friedland. And this is another of I believe this was the third place in the Book 2 prize. Paradise Falls was second, I think. Now, going back to Escape Artist, it's a story of a Jewish man who was sent to Auschwitz. And it is the story of how he struggles to survive and how he's absolutely determined to escape from Auschwitz. Now, I never really heard about people escaping from Auschwitz before, but it happened. And it is a story of how he got out and how he went to the governments outside saying, this is happening. They are murdering Jewish people in these camps. And how the world reacted to that. You would think they would react stronger, but really, this was wartime. The people in charge, I think they sort of knew something like that was going on. But this is just a fascinating story of a man absolutely determined to overcome his obstacle. Sandy Hook, An American Tragedy and the Battle for Truth by Elizabeth Williamson, 2022. This was also for the BookTube prize. I did not read it as a judge. I just picked it up on my own in anticipation that it might be making it to the final round. It didn't, which is unfortunate because I think this book really probably should have been in the top tier or second tier of prize winners. It really is that good. On the surface, the author is going to say in the introduction that this is not an anti-gun book. Although once you finish reading this book, you are going to be asking yourself how America can ever allow these number of guns to proliferate this country. Although that is not, as I said, that is not the real subject of this book. The subject of this book is the grief that the parents feel at the loss of their children, murdered by a military weapon. Or should we say, not exactly a military weapon, but a close imitation of a military weapon. But it's about their grief, and it's about Alex Jones. Alex Jones was, of course, a radio personality who said that Sandy Hook was a hoax, that no children died at Sandy Hook. It was all an invention of the media to help promote gun legislation and get guns banned. Now, Alex Jones, of course, lost his lawsuit. He was found liable for defaming the parents of Sandy Hook. And just the utter depravity of this man, Alex Jones, comes out in this book. Really fascinating. G-Man, J. Edgar Hoover, and the Making of the American Century by Beverly Gage, 2022. This won the Pulitzer Prize in nonfiction. It got knocked out of the BookTube prize, I believe, in the second round. I wish it had gotten further. I read it on my own, not as a judge for the BookTube prize. Now, J. Edgar Hoover is an enigma. After reading this biography, I'm still not sure I know what he really was, who he really was. But you get a good idea of the century that surrounded him. He is the famous first director of the FBI. And he really molded that organization to what it is today. Or at least it was over the century. Because this is a picture of a century, because he was the director for a very long time. And what's interesting about this, and I say this because, again, I don't really know the man. I just know his actions. You don't get that inner feeling of this is who he was. And he J. Edgar Hoover gets a rep. I remember talking to a fellow booktuber. He's going, "Oh yeah, what about his cross dressing?" And the cross dressing was just very lightly touched on in this book. I don't think it's an important part of who he was, but there's some doubt about his sexuality. He lived with a man, and were they homosexual lovers? Were they something else? It's never really fully explained because no one actually knows. I do think J. Edgar Hoover probably was a homosexual. I don't know if he was a practicing homosexual. I don't think that's important. But what he did, he kept that innerness, from what I can understand, that feeling that he did not let anyone know. But also, J. Edgar Hoover was such a staunch anti-communist. He wanted to root out those secret communists from this country, protect them from their vile communist ways. Was that uh, pro- was that a projection of his homosexuality? I'm not sure. But either way, this is such a fascinating look at American history. A very recommended book. A Worse Place Than Hell: How the Civil War Battle of Fredericksburg Changed a Nation, by John Matson, 2021. This is history as it really should be written. This is not history for scholars or academics. This is a history for people who want to know about our nation and what happened in the Civil War. This is surrounding the Battle of Fredericksburg here in Virginia, a town that I currently live in. It is the story of 5 lives and how those lives were affected by the Battle of Fredericksburg. It is the story of Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. Yes, that Wendell Holmes, who became a Supreme Court judge, and how he was involved in the battles of the Civil War. There is a one-eyed chaplain named Arthur Fuller. I had never heard of Arthur Fuller before this story, although the name has become much more famous through some of his descendants. Walt Whitman, the famous American poet. Everyone knows about Walt Whitman, don't you? Louise May Alcott, the author of Little Women. The author, John Matson, is mostly known as a work of literary history, and his specialty is Louise May Alcott. So there's no surprise that she came into this book. But yes, she was part of the Civil War too, and how the Civil War and her works as a nurse helped her become the author that she would become. And then there is the West Point candidate, John Pelham, who fought on the side of the South. And he was a rather brilliant military tactician of artillery. Again, a person that I never would have known about if I had not read this book. And I can highly recommend this for anyone who wants to learn more about history, more about America, more about the Civil War, because it was just a wonderful book. And I said, more history should be written to the general public and not for the academics or the scholars. Well, anyway, thank you for watching. And those were my best books of 2023, the books that gave me the most amount of satisfaction. Thank you for watching, and keep on reading.